Wig, did you just say wig?
Wig, okay.
I know, wig. I feel that already.
Wig, okay.
Wig, did you just say wig?
Wig, okay.
I am ready for my wig to go
it worked
flying.
out. Hi kids, I'm Martyr.
I'm C. Tepper.
And this is Wigging Out. God, okay.
I wanted to go Alaska on that one.
We're a little loopy today, I guess.
I don't know why. My chai tea really kicked in today.
I've been up since 7. I'm tired, but like I'm in a good mood because we're talking to one of my favorite people in the world.
And what episode is this? It's our Valentine's Day episode.
Oh, it is our Valentine's Day episode. That's a gag.
Which is great because they're looking real like a snack right now. They look real good.
They sure are. Caitlin, who are we talking to?
Okay.
Who are we talking to?
So all the way from California, but y'all know them from Brooklyn. It's Blvck D. Woo!
Hey, mortals.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. Hi, babe. Yeah. I haven't seen your face in a minute. It's probably like October.
I literally saw you a year ago for my birthday, but it wasn't like a birthday party. It was just an event happening at my birthday.
Honestly, I feel like I can't remember what yesterday was because I feel like what is time nowadays with like going on?
Right? For real though.
The thing that I feel like I miss the most about people, like personal interactions, is just like seeing people's faces. Mm-hmm. And like I know we have like Zoom and whatever, but like seeing you two over just like I don't know, it's just bringing back all the feels of Brooklyn and drag. Because like honestly, before you guys hit me up for this, I have not been thinking about drag for the most part. I've just been like, you know, just doing me right now, like all the girls say.
I think we all are though.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's really like thinking about their drag careers unless you applied to Drag Race. That's about it. Like everyone else is kind of like.
I did. Thank you.
Okay.
I hope that you are suitable as Candy is this season. Candy is like, I'm like living for her like stereo moment from the first episode.
Oh my God, so good, so good.
I love the Brooklyn rep this season so far.
So just Candy.
Well, I'm counting Candy and Olivia. I know Olivia is not technically.
She just lives in Brooklyn. She was never Brooklyn Queen though.
But I love her.
I met Olivia Lux once when she came to Mocha Light and Fisty Meaner's show at Mackie Park called Sorry, I've Been Drinking. And I think it was she had just moved to Brooklyn from like Jersey or Golden
Yeah,
Beach.
she's from Jersey.
Yeah. And she was really sweet. She was like just trying to like work the bars and trying to get a feel of the scene. But I don't think the dive bars in Brooklyn was like what she was looking for because her hair, which was beautiful by the way, that updo though was like half the ceiling immaculate.
I think it's you have to be a very specific type of queen to like consistently do Brooklyn in a good way, not in a bad way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Shall we get our questions?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Caitlin?
So I guess this kind of combo question, because Martyr's like, I had 2 different topics. Martyr's like, it's going to be answered in the first question. What's going on with you in the pandemic right now?
So what's going on with me in the pandemic right now is that I'm kind of doing a like restart in a sense. I'm kind of like taking advantage of the chaos to find my so-called like inner peace, kind of like controlling my controllables. Like originally when the pandemic had first happened, it was almost a year ago. It was like March.
Yeah.
When it came over in like New York City, we started to shut down. And at that time I was working my like day job while still being like semi full-time, like doing drag in Brooklyn. Cause at that time I had Bark After Dark, I had like Wallbreaker, I had, you know, just like performing and just trying to do my best. But then I'll never forget this. When the pandemic happened, like I was furloughed and then all the bars were closed. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do live shows. And
online.
Oh yes. And it was right after the Oops Girls had like did their like infamous live show and everyone was like doing like, okay, let's all do live shows. And I was planning my like Willow tribute show where I had
Willow Smith?
Willow Smith.
I remember that.
Oh, I love her.
I love her too. She's kind of like, I feel like if I was born a you know, natural born quote unquote woman that I was Willow Smith. You know, I feel like she's like my
Yeah.
sister. I feel like she's like my missing part.
Yes.
You know, a lot of her music just like really just vibes with me, and I feel like that would have been like cool kind of like concert to give the fans and the peeps
Yeah.
kind of like an anthem for her show and her music, and also I just wanted to kind of like show off a little bit, flex, because I performed most of her songs already, so I had like the outfits and stuff, and I'll never forget it this night because it was when Instagram couldn't handle the load of all the live shows.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and it was, I think it was the first time Instagram Live like crashed during all the live shows, and I was in my friend's studio. It was my friend Jason who does a lot of photography for my House of D. And the studio and everything was set up, and Live just would not work. Live would not work, and the only thing I remember from that night was I was just like, you know what, fuck it, you know what, it's not happening, it's done, I can't do it. And I took off my wig, I took my makeup off my suitcase, went all the way home. I went to my roommate and I was like, can I just like get your Lime-A-Rita Budweiser? I'll give you $3 in the morning. I promise. I'm just like going through the motions, because at that time I was basing my drag and my career off of just like, you know, staying relevant or being that bitch, or just like build our repertoire of the rat race that is the scene.
Yep.
There was something that just clicked in that moment where I just didn't want to just do it anymore, because in that moment I was just doing it for the relevancy, because drag was just starting to transition into that like digital platform.
Yep.
And I don't know, something just what I call now my inner bitch, but there was something in me that was just like, we're just not doing this. And I was just going through like what's called the dark night of the soul. That's when I was just like, felt like I just couldn't do anything, because like drag for me saved my life. I know a lot of people say that, and I'm people too, but for me, drag literally saved my life. And doing drag in Brooklyn specifically, because it was able to like let me figure out my gender identity in a non-biased environment. Because Brooklyn drag, or the Brooklyn community at that time, this was like 2017, allowed people to like just like be free and be whatever. And like I wasn't doing drag for that anymore. I wasn't doing drag to have fun or be free for my gender expression. It was like a job at that point.
Yeah.
And like any job, when you get to a certain point, when you kind of either plateau or it just isn't fulfilling your soul, you just leave. And not that I left drag, but I took a pause to kind of just figure out like, okay, at that point, I felt like the world was ending, and it was like March or April.
Yep.
And I just bit the bullet, and I went back to therapy for my mental health, and I started talking to my therapist, and I got a psychiatrist. And not that like I was like unbalanced per se, but it definitely added a lot of clarity, and I got a lot of awesome tools to figure out, oh, you know what, I feel like I'm on my unemployment, and I'm kind of in a safe bubble to kind of be privileged, and the certain privilege that I have, which is, okay, I'm getting money from the government, I don't have to work, let me work on me, and let me honestly like work on me, because I felt like Mother Earth, the world, whatever Gaia, whatever you want to call it, was telling us, bitch, I'm hot, you know, calm down, you kids are grounded, stay inside for a couple months. And let's talk about it. What happened those couple months? In India, you can see the Himalayas for the first time in centuries. A lot of smog was clearing up in China. Like the whole world at once was kind of slowing down, and people were, you know, and I know a lot of people talk about the quarantine 15, but if you think about beauty and weight in that sense of like back in the day, and I mean back in the day in like medieval times, people who were bigger were actually saw as wealthy and joyous and cool. And I feel like a lot of people were getting back to a healthier side, and you know, whether that was gaining weight or doing vocational stuff. But to answer your question in that long tangent, I
love it.
A restart, bringing it back. I was just doing a restart, and that day when the Willow show didn't happen, I'm grateful for that moment, because it kind of shook me up, because I wasn't doing drag for me anymore. I was doing it for the audience or for whoever, because I was a pretty guardian in Brooklyn. I had to do everything for everyone, and then I wasn't myself, and it kind of got to that point, you know.
Yeah. Well, I know you went back to California, where you are originally from. What led to that decision?
Yeah, so that actually ties back to my therapy too. My therapist, who honestly, like, she is so cool, because she talks a lot about, she's very open to a lot of ideas and concepts. And so I was experiencing a lot of just trauma and turmoil from the past summer, not just from the police brutality stuff, and not just from the pandemic, but a lot of spiritual stuff too. In a
Mhm.
sense, I connected with my dad. My dad's Nigerian, and so he told me the meaning of my legal name, which is
Oh.
my legal name is Ololade Oguntayo, which is Nigerian for the bringer of wealth, whose home welcomes the god of iron. And so
Hmm.
once he told me that, all this other stuff started happening. It's like I just started having a lot of spiritual experiences, and you can just take that for wherever that is. And
Mhm.
I was seeing a lot of signs and a lot of things in my synchronicity that was telling me to go back to the beginning, like go back home
Mhm.
and not necessarily go back home and like to run away, but like go back home and kind of just like I wanted to go home and kind of help my family.
Okay.
But I a lot in New York City, and I learned a lot of drag with myself in terms of just like either mental health stuff or a lot of stuff in my activism, and I wanted to bring that back home because something that one of my teachers told me in like high school I'll never forget was that because I grew up, I'm originally from like South Central, so like
Mhm.
south side of LA or like South Bay, and one of my high school teachers always said how people leave the ghetto, quote unquote, they'll make it and they kind of never go back. Not
Mm.
made it per se, but again, we're in this rare opportunity where I personally believe anything is possible. And
Mhm.
so I want to take all my experiences that I've learned from Brooklyn and kind of bring it back home to kind of help my family. Um, because let's say, because something I'm telling myself is that how can I go out and help the world if I can't even help my home?
Yeah.
That's something that I want to do. So I'm kind of spending time to do that. But also, um, I was dealing with a lot of just I don't want to say drama per se, but I moved to back to LA in December,
Mhm.
and like the summer, let's say, was like a roller coaster, and I want to say around October, September, no, it was like September. I was kind of like creeping back into like social media and like the drag scene because I've been working on
Mhm.
my tape, which is coming out. Actually, it's coming out in February and Valentine's Day. It's gonna be
Wow, we did not plan this, everyone.
Plug, 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 plug.
honestly,
We did
when I
not
heard that,
plan this. So,
that was like perfect plug. So the for that's called D Mixtape Part One and Two. It'll be a
oh,
lot of songs from
awesome.
like Lady D Boy. If you like Boyfriend Twins and all that fun jazz and Breaking Binary, those stuff will be recorded finally. But I was working on that stuff and I was like slowly promoting my new kind of form I was creating, and I kind of got into some drag drama. Uh,
In Brooklyn?
Girl, in Brooklyn of all places,
Oh,
could you
Ooh.
believe
okay.
in Brooklyn?
I was like,
And
it's not going to be in
Brooklyn?
LA. LA is like, I don't know. It's not like that there.
I was just like, long story short, girl, I was just like in a crazy living situation where
uh,
I was in what my therapist says, in a very like delicate situation where I'm
mhm.
growing into like, new forms, or I'm just in a vulnerable state right now. And I
Yeah.
needed a place of like, kind of like unconditional love and not be in a living situation where I'm like looking over my shoulders.
Hmm.
We'll get into that later, but
Yeah.
that was kind of like, I would say the last straw where I realized I don't have to be in New York to do drag anymore
Nope.
Mm,
because drag is
There's
digital.
no drag happening here. I mean, there is, but not really.
There really isn't that much of a quote unquote community, and we can get into that if you guys really want to.
Yeah.
In my eyes, in terms of what I considered a community when I started compared to what it is now.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I just realized there was quote unquote like nothing here keeping me here.
Hmm.
When I first moved here, I didn't know who or what I was, and I wanted to make a name or just make something for myself. But
Hmm.
now I know who and what I am, and I can be anywhere. So I choose
Hmm.
to be in a place of unconditional love and sunshine, and so I chose
Ugh,
Los
I'm
Angeles.
so jealous. I'm so jealous.
I know, I'm like
So
freezing in my bedroom right now.
I know I'm
So,
literally freezing. Like I put my jacket on while we were talking.
I love that for you.
you hateful bitch. I love you.
I mean, I got to be. I'm just, black lady.
Oh my gosh.
So we're talking about where you are now, but I want to go back and talk
Ooh,
about how you got into drag. So
yeah.
how did that all happen?
All right, so we're gonna do that. It has to be. We have to go back in time, which I guess now would be my drag anniversary. Is technically coming up. It's actually January 27th. That's when I had my first official like booking,
Oh,
which was
cute.
my first show, uh, or my first time like doing quote unquote, I guess, drag.
Yeah.
It happened in 2016. I call that for me the year that should never be named because I know a lot of people that was like a blackout year, even compared to 2020. If you think about
Hmm.
it, 2016 was just like just insane. Besides, like, I'm being elected, but for me, that's where I lost like my like dream job. I lost my dream job. I like lost my like my best friend.
Oh.
I was dating. I considered like the love of my 20s. Like, like we had like a really tumultuous breakup, and then to put the icing on the cake, Trump had just got elected.
Yep.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to be in the concentration camps next week anyway. So
The scary thing is that's kind of what happened too.
Hello.
Yeah.
So it was like, I just like started just like wearing makeup and started just experiencing my gender expression that I've been kind of like creeping into, because I just started listening to Cakes to Killa and Leaf, and I saw these bodies being like feminine, which in Black culture, in the Black community, a masculine or male figure should not be feminine. It's just like, oh, I know that's in like every community, but in the Black community.
Oh, I know, it's very specific.
And so just so to see that, I was like, oh my God, that's just like me. And seeing them be feminine, just like be themselves, I started to do that too. And my weed dealer at the time, who was producing shows in Brooklyn, he had a show at Macri Park called WERRRK. Sorry, not WERRRK. Oh my God, sorry, not WERRRK.
We could edit it.
So sorry. It was a show called Otterbox from Jorge. In Macri Park at the time, and this was 2017.
Okay.
Is when I got the booking for January, and he heard how I had this breakup, and he said, "Hey, I know you started to write poetry, and started to do like these open mic nights." Because at that point, I was just like spewing out my heart, just like and like lyrically as poems, and I started to just like talk out the poetry as kind of like the slam poetry, but then I added music to it, and I was like, I guess I'm rapping, cool. And then so he's like, "Our box is coming up. It's your birthday in January. Do you want to perform?" I was like, oh my God, sure, yeah. And then I had all my friends at the time. I did this whole mass Facebook invite of like 100 people, and only 5 people showed up. So little did I know that would be foreshadowing for just a lot of beginners.
Forever.
You know,
just for New York nightlife.
But for me, having my birthday in January, my birthday is on New Year's Day. It's always.
Oh, you're a Capricorn?
I'm a Capricorn, and I rock on Capricorn Earth sign. Very stressful for birthdays if you're born around holidays, because most people aren't really like in town or can afford. Kids is right up to Christmas, all these other things. So I was very anxious. So I did a song, and Mary Cherry was there, and Honolulu was there. Honolulu actually opened, and it was really cool. So that was my very first show, and then ever since then, I just started going to Macri Park and started to realize there was this whole community that I didn't realize was underneath me. And that was January 2017, and and I guess like the rest is like history, history. My first like official booking after that was this show called Good. It was this show called Good Karma, and that was actually where I met Harajuku, and this was at Bazaar Bushwick. Yes,
R.I.P. But not really.
Right.
So you've had many drag names throughout the years. Tell us about the journey of all the drag names.
Yeah, so my very first drag name was actually Le Dubois, and it was spelled like W-E-B Dubois. Kind of like that connotation, and if you said it really fast, it sounded like Lady Boy. But for some reason, a lot of people who read that did not get that, and so I was very. It was never Le Dubois. It was very Le Dubois. Lady Bois or Lady Boys. And so then I was like, okay, let me just like condense it, right? So then I was like, hey, Lay, L-A-E, then D, period, boy. So Lay D Boy. And then I was Lady Boy. And that was because at the time I was just experiencing a lot of gender dysphoria, and I wanted to kind of figure out how I can present myself in this drag form. And I felt at that time, I was like, I'm not really necessarily female, but not necessarily male. And little did I know that was a term called gender non-binary that I would soon identify as. But I was a lady boy because I felt like I was a lady boy. But that kind of bit me in the foot because a lot of people didn't really accept me as my drag persona at the time because it really wasn't polished. It was very androgynous. And that's where everyone wanted to be like fishy and all that stuff. And I know that's still a thing now, which I honestly, I don't understand, because I feel like if someone could perform, let them perform, give them a chance. You never know.
Absolutely. Oh man.
And progress. And then from there, it was Lay D. For a hot second, I was just Lay D. And then after Lady, I became Black Lady. And fun fact, I said that I did a post about this on my Instagram a couple months ago, but it was for World AIDS Day, and it talked about why I called myself Black Lady, which was when I found out I was actually HIV in 2018. And so I called that my like incubation period, because like I was still dealing with myself and I felt like I was tainted. So I felt like my blood was literally black. Demon. So I was like, I'm becoming this thing. And for it to sound like Black Lady was actually an afterthought. So I just like love how that worked out. And now I'm Black D, because now in my drag journey, Black Lady is in a state of stasis. You know, coronavirus, the crown virus, sent shockwave across the world, and many drag stoners did not survive, except for one who was actually caught between life and death, and that's Black Lady. And so I'm waiting for my masculine side to be my Prince Charming to wake her up, because when she comes up, everybody's gonna be canceled. But so Black D is gonna be kind of what Lady Boy would have been if I never became Lady or Black Lady, if I never really became more of a feminized version of my drag. I really was kind of, I don't want to say like the social pressures of drag, but I definitely did want to fit in the community. And so I wanted to get booked, and I slowly made myself more feminine. But the reason why, as I grew more into my drag persona and more into who I was confidently, I felt more comfortable as like the darker side of my drag, opposed to the side, because a lot of people see that I can do both well if I wanted to. Sometimes both in one face. But when every time I dress femme or like really like fishy, I felt like that is what I should have been if I wasn't stuck in this male body. And so there's that kind of disconnect of gender identity still that was like leaking in. Granted, I was like Black Lady. And so, and that was some of the stuff I was doing with my therapist, which is called shadow work, is when you kind of like meditate and go in and you see kind of why the things you do that you do, and you kind of add awareness to your stuff. And I was like, well, okay, why do I feel like when I, you know, dress my face really femme, or if I wear clothes that are like really femme, that I feel like, oh, this feels wrong. Not that I feel like dressing up as him is wrong, but why do I feel like, I felt very frustrated that like, why isn't this me? This should have been me. This isn't fair. Now I'm learning to accept my masculine side, because of course we know in this world, masculinity, there's a lot of toxic masculinity, but masculinity inherently is not toxic.
Of course.
But the patriarchy of this world has made it toxic. And so a lot of people identify masculinity as a whole as toxic. And so they kind of, you know, they kind of keep at arm's distance, or they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I was definitely one of those people for a long time. But now I'm realizing, you know, granted, I don't want to like create dogmas and tell other people what to do or say or whatever, but how I feel personally is that masculinity isn't toxic. And for me as Black D, it's going to be this Black gangster rapper who's a ghoul. And so all my songs that I didn't have the confidence to like rap or say or record as Lady Boy, I'm going to do it as Black D. So consider this as, you know, I'm seeing Corona as like a kind of time or dimension shift where, you know, we are who we are now, but we're kind of like have different drag personas. So it's like who I am now is connecting to the part of me that was kind of missing, the masculine side. I was always looking for, whether that was in hookups or whether that was in mentors, you know, that masculine kind of archetype. So now I'm just finding that for myself.
You actually answered my next couple of questions in that one. Answer.
We love when that happens, though.
So that makes me very happy. I'm like,
you don't cut me off, I will run them out.
No, we want that. You're on a podcast. That's like the whole point of this. I think we're good for a break because you answered like everything that I was.
Yeah. And I think we're good on time. So
yeah, we're totally good on time. So we can let's do just like a break.
We'll
intro.
Take a little, yeah. Well, that's what I was doing, Caitlin.
Sorry.
We'll be right back, kids.
Yay.
Bye.
Wig, okay.
I know, wig. I feel that already.
Wig, okay.
Lay, do you remember where we met? Because I don't.
Yeah, girl. It was at never. I know. I always say I'll never forget. When I say stuff like I'll never forget, I really mean that because these are moments that really make me smile. Because I was at Dragnet, and no, sorry, not Drag. I always get them confused. It was for Mrs. Miss BK, currently called Mix BK now, but back then it was called Mrs. Miss BK.
I remember that.
18. And I saw you, and I'm a very aesthetic person. I'm a very visually inclined person, as I assume most drag performers are. But you stood
You'd be
out.
surprised.
You had, which is now your trademark all white look. But the only person at that time I feel like was only doing like a white face was like Untitled Queen in Brooklyn. And so not that I was like, oh, that's Untitled Queen, because like everyone, she just has a specific look. But
know what Untitled Queen looks like.
So I saw you and I was like, oh, this bitch is she's gonna be one to look out for. And then so me I just like to talk to the girls and just like to see and just size of the competition. And I went up and I was like talking to you, and then no tea, no shade, girl. But
you're like, no competition here.
Well, and I was like, because you're like, it's like people can't see it, but your energy was like at like 1 or 2, but your look was at 8 or 9. So I was like,
that sounds about right.
I was like, oh,
yeah.
Reader.
Yeah. Girl, I'm shy. I can't help it.
It's funny that you have a podcast because you don't like to talk.
No, that's the thing. I like to talk, but I like to listen more. Unlike some people.
That's true.
Okay, well, we're back, kids. Hi.
We're just reading each other. But okay, we read each other, but after hanging out with Adriana and Isaac on My Wig, that's their podcast right now. Oh man. I'm so nice to Martyr in comparison to Isaac and Adriana. Like, I am like a freaking angel compared to how Isaac treats Adriana, but it's so funny. I'm obsessed with them. They're going to be on here at some point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll definitely have a crossover event.
Yeah,
of the season.
I'm kind of obsessed, but oh man, I'm so much nicer.
That was wild.
There's just such a trend with like a lot of podcasts right now too. Like the kind of, if they have like a different dynamic, they'll like tease each other.
Yeah.
Just like a little.
It's all love. Yeah. It's because our birthdays are right next to each other, so we have to.
They're literally
you're an Aquarius too?
Yeah, we're both Aquarius. I'm literally the day after Martyr.
That's why you're weird, but in the best way.
Absolutely, always.
Oh my god, yeah. The curse of the Aquarii.
Yeah, I guess so. The age of Aquarius. We're literally in it right now.
Did it start?
It started in December. No. That's just the age of Aquarius. That's different than like the actual zodiac sign. It's complicated.
I don't know any. Okay.
It's a good thing. It's good. That's all you need to know.
I think it's possible.
Yeah,
like
it's.
Hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know Lay. I don't know if I don't remember that night. I barely remember anything nowadays. I blame the poppers, but. I do remember you doing Boyfriend Twins. I think it was the first time. Was the first time at Macri Park?
The very first time I did Boyfriend Twins was not at Macri Park. It was at an open set. And it was at an open set. It was the first time I actually performed it, and the mic did not work. The mic didn't work, and I'm laughing because this whole kind of events is really funny because the mic didn't work. And so it was a very communal moment because everyone started to clap their hands to help with like the rhythm for the music. And I was rapping, which was cute. And then the DJ at the time was DJ Pat. And he felt really bad. So it was like, hey, I'll book you for fake nudes. I said, bitch, bet. So I was not complaining, but that Rosemont.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. But sorry, I'm trying to think of transition. Okay? My brain not work right now.
Wait, you said you had a question for us.
No wrinkles.
What's your question?
Oh yeah, Lay, you said you mentioned a question.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna ask you guys, since it's like B-Day, what would you rather be a 30-year-old virgin or be someone who's 30 years old who has never had a Valentine?
Well, considering I'm almost that one.
I mean, as someone who is 30, Though by the time this airs, I will be 31. I guess I'd rather not have a Valentine. Like, you can have relationships other times of the year.
She has a boyfriend, y'all, so that's out of the question.
Your answer then.
I'm trying to think. I've only had a Valentine, I think, 3 years in a row, and that was it. Because I was in a long-term relationship, and then every other year, I usually have like hookups on Valentine's Day, but like nothing concrete.
Not like an actual Valentine. What's your answer?
Mine, the reason, so give you a little, before I give you my answer, I came up with that question because currently I'm 29, so I will be 30 next year, because that's how math works, right?
Yep.
So for V-Day, so next year I will be the former of that question. Like, I would be someone who is like 30 years old who has never had a Valentine.
Okay.
And I think about that because I'm like, would I rather not have a Valentine and and just like know the of like being free or whatever, or would I rather be a virgin but I can still be with someone who loves me unconditionally, but or at least know what that's like to be with someone on Valentine's Day. By that point.
I think Valentine's Day is overrated.
Right?
Someone who like was always like, when you're a cis woman, like it's very forced upon you more than like any other gender. So like, I feel like it's just a social construct.
But
out of it that way too, like the fact that I like straight people.
I just wanted to say I am happy you are on our episode for Valentine's Day, because you were talking about self-love and self-care, and I think that's very an important time to do that right now.
Yeah,
it worked out.
I agree.
We totally planned it. We totally planned
all of this to happen today.
And your album's coming out.
Your album. This was like so planned, so far ahead.
I will say, tie into that a word I said before the break, which is called synchronicity. And so synchronicity is a psychological term that talks about finding the meaningness and random moments, right? Or like, say for instance, all day you might see the number 3, and then you get home and then you get like 3 text messages. You're like, what does this mean, or whatever? Or like you might dream about something and then it happens in real life, or vice versa. It's like just finding significant moments and whatever. And I feel like we just had that like synchronatic moment and like V-Day, and you guys planning this and my music coming out and TV.
I feel like that happens actually with a lot of our podcast episodes. Like it just ends up being very timely. And we certainly did not necessarily plan it that way.
We didn't plan that at all.
Like, professionals. That it worked out because like Lady Boy, my drag, and Black Lady, especially Black Lady too, they were actually created from like heartbreak specifically. Like I mentioned, like the guy I was seeing at the time, when I was like Lady Boy, which is ironic because that person is like, they're not like a DJ in this scene like that anyone that but there's DJing now. And it's something that I was like telling them at the time, like, hey, I believe in you, I have this talent, whatever. And that was just a situation where someone wasn't ready to receive my love. And so listening after them, right? It's like, why doesn't this person like me? So when
the struggle
happens, sometimes we put it on ourselves instead of realizing, it has nothing to do with me.
It's a hard lesson.
But it was frustrating because he was the first guy who ever really accepted me as someone who was gender non-binary. That was the thing for me. I was like, I'll never find this again. And so, but then I realized, like, as I came into like Brooklyn nightlife and the gay community, I had this power, this voice to kind of like in my music to kind of like talk about the stuff that was happening. Whether that be guys who date themselves, aka boyfriend twins that we all like know about. Or I have this one song that Untitled really loves called Weak Chins, and it talks about guys who have beards, but they have no chins underneath their beards. But there are some guys who won't date guys without beards. You know what I mean? And it's like
that's an amazing concept.
Or it's like, and they're the same type of guys who would like, and let's talk about straight culture. Those are the same men who would say like, oh, women are like imposters because they take the makeup off of.
Oh my God, all the time.
Okay, dude, let's shave off your beard or that mustache. Let's see what's underneath that. Let's see what's underneath those sideburns. Interesting.
It's so true though.
Or there's this one song that I really love that talks, or a lot of my songs aren't all about like grading guys, but a lot of it has to do with self-love too, which one of my favorite ones is called Breaking Binary. And it talks the power that we have as queer people to be individuals and to create our own happiness, and we have the happiness within ourselves. You know, we have to break our internal binary before we go out and break the binary of the world.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is like, if once you love your, like, find self-love and like just realize that relationships, they're gonna happen if they're meant to happen, I feel like you feel a lot freer.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, you don't have to force it, which I wish I told myself when I was much, much younger, because I've had so much heartbreak in my life for no reason. You just put it on yourself, you know?
And like, I will say, moving to LA has helped my mental health for the, not besides the sun or being away from, you know, drama or whatever, but like the guys in Brooklyn, I now realize that the Brooklyn gays, girl, they are, they talk
They
to me
ain't shit.
I would just say that they ain't shit. And I realized, because I've been out here and guys have been hitting me up and trying to do meetings and stuff. And I'm like, bitch, it's a pandemic and I live with old people. So no. However, though, I've had certain dates and stuff, and I might have got myself into a relationship, and then I got myself in a relationship. It was fast. Okay. Like, LA moves fast.
I know.
I was like, oh, I wish I didn't. Who knew? But it's just crazy how like just a change of setting or scenery can change your self-worth. And
oh my God, absolutely.
How, like, in Brooklyn, I felt like, oh my God, I'm ugly, nobody likes me. And here, I was like, oh damn. I'm like, you know,
you
look
looking good. You're a snack right now. I'm telling you.
I wanted to bring up a point that you were talking about in the our little first section.
Yeah.
Because I remember we had this conversation. I don't know where this conversation was being held, but I remember you were very concerned about basically like hustling, trying to stay relevant, like you said earlier, like how you got burnt out eventually, especially before pandemic. But I never saw you as like trying to keep up, because I always saw you as like a community builder and how you produce shows and such, because you kind of like, you were such a great producer and you would create such spaces that were like super unique and dynamic and like shit that wasn't like getting produced or seen by a variety of folks in Brooklyn. So like, that's why I always admired you. And I loved your shows. I mean, I didn't go to all of them, but I did go to quite a few.
You had a lot of shows.
Definitely built to that point, to having a lot of shows. But thank you, Martyr. That actually means a lot, because I feel like as artists, we oftentimes have imposter syndrome where we don't see our worth until like after the fact, and we look back and like, damn, I should have stuck with that, or why didn't I see that? And for me, how I got into producing was in two ways. A, like before drag and all that stuff, I think something I want, if there's any of our drag sibs or anyone who is the drag performer and wants to be a drag performer, something I want to get out there is that if you want to produce a show, before I even get into the story, how I got into it, is that it's all about, you know, who you know opposed to what you know, in a sense. Because for me, when I started to produce shows, I got my first show again from Jorge, who was then the producer of Otterbox at Macri Park. But now, a year into me doing drag, a year later, I got my first show, Anime, which was at the Deep End, which was the bar that he co-managed. And prior to that, I forgot that like I had an experience of like marketing and doing events, and that's something I want to get into. Like whoever starts drag, or if you do drag, you have a life and an identity outside of your drag persona, because you'll get so lost into what RuPaul calls the monster, because it consumes you. It really does. So don't forget your skills and your assets, because you can use that in your drag career as well. And for me, I forgot, duh, bitch, I literally produced events for a retail brand, like duh. So then once I realized, oh wait, let me go to bars and present to them, okay, this is the theme of my show, this is what I projected numbers would be based off of da 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 da. And do you need to do that every time? Absolutely not. However, if you start conversations and not be afraid of hearing no, then at least the person will remember you. Opposed to doing what I hear that happens a lot in the scene. A lot of people complain about, oh my God, why does this person have that show? They're not being this good. Or why is this person but haven't been in the scene for that long? And that was attention. And that a lot of that was actually said to me and behind that. Because at that point, I was doing drag for about a year, and I had a show. And at that time, 2017, 2018, didn't really happen a lot. Because I would say drag in general is very gatekeeping in a sense. You know, if you're not part of this person's like good side, you won't get booked. You're gonna go to these person's thing. However, I will say Brooklyn, there is an etiquette to being booked, which I respect in the sense of you kind of have to quote unquote pay your dues, which is the formula that I kind of like saw in my head was a show that you want to get booked that you would first obviously introduce yourself to that person. You know, don't assume the person knows who you are. I'm like, I want to be booked to your show. You don't know who I am. Da da da.
It happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, make sure you introduce yourself to that person. Go to that person's show. You know, prior to the world ending. Go to that person's show, and make sure that you go and you support that show you want to be in. And then hopefully, you know, that person, the producer, will see that you're supporting the show, and then they'll book you. That's usually how it went, and that's how I got my bookings. But when it comes to producing, that's kind of a different monster because you have to make sure you have a good relationship with that bar. You know, not just the bar manager or the bartenders, but like the bar itself. And for me, I'm very respectful of my space, and like, you know, and I feel like that has to do with growing up as someone who didn't really have a lot of space, or just a lot in general. And you know, I will say that, granted, you know, my parents, specifically my mom, was not able to give me a lot income-wise growing up. But the one thing she told me was, that she gave me was ambition. You know, she told me that like, I don't care what you do, you can be the president or a hamburger flipper, but make sure you're like the best one. And she didn't realize she was throwing that to a Capricorn, so that was adding fuel to the fire. But when I had my first show in producing, it was very, how can I put it? It was very challenging because it was definitely going up a stream or going like against the current because there were a lot of people blocking me for doing these shows because I was, you have to remember, I was someone who was a Black performer. So there weren't even a lot of Black performers in Brooklyn at that time, let alone being booked, let alone producing shows. That's number one. Number two, I was someone who was like androgynous looking, so I wasn't the clear aesthetic of like a drag king or a drag queen. And I say that in one of my songs too, where I says that, why do you care if I pat a tug? I'm just feeling my dish and I don't give a fuck, you know, and like, who cares, you know? Oh, and I say like, I may not pat a tug, but like, I'm a butch queen, you know, like, it doesn't matter how I present. I'm not a look queen or a drag queen. Like, that was like the conversation at the time. So like, it was very out of pocket for me to get a show. But that, I feel like that was like the quiet storm that happened, was like, I got one show and then I made sure that show was like kind of established, which was anime. And then my second show was Reparations, which was, to my knowledge, the only Black, you know, all Black party, which really was not all Black party at the time. It was just like an all POC party, and that was Brown Sugar, Mary Cherry's Brown Sugar at Macri Park. And so me, I always had the mentality of see need, fill a need. I saw there was a show that was produced by Black producers for Black performers to create a space for them, and I wanted to have a fundraising moment to give money back to charities and causes like Princess Janae Place, who helps trans POCs or Black people in Brooklyn in general. You know, not to say that we need help of anyone else, but bitch, we need help. Reparations. That's literally what the whole thing.
That's right.
And from there was kind of like, kind of like a snowstorm, because after Reparations, I had, damn, what did I have after Reparations? I mean, like, I had anime, Reparations, and then
Let's Have WERRRK.
WERRRK, I co-produced with Annalisa, which I love Annalisa Campos. She is an amazing producer. WERRRK, I say WERRRK is her party. Granted, she originally started it with Bible Girl.
Oh, I've been to it when Bible Girl was there.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Was that at Club Coming?
No. That was at Macri Park, darling.
Macri Park. I've been there though. I know I was there when Bible was there back in the day.
And then when Bible Girl moved to LA, Annalisa and Bible Girl loved what I was doing in the community at the time, so they asked me to kind of replace Bible Girl. And so I kind of took it from there, and then it was like, Martyr said, let's have, which eventually became a competition. That was at Dromedary Bar. And Dromedary Bar eventually kind of became like the quote unquote home bar. Blackwood Park was mine. If I had to say any bar was my home bar, I would say Blackwood Park was definitely that space. But Dromedary was my space I was trying to create for myself and anyone else who wanted to kind of create parties that weren't happening. Because Let's Have, the whole concept was think of that Amanda show, that was like a drag show where I just wanted to have random moments every week or every month. It's like, let's have a musical. Let's have a riot. Let's have beers. You know, we just had, and I did that with DJ Lady Simon, superstar DJ. She DJ'd a lot of my shows. Also, Ghoul School, she DJ'd. I did that with Madam School, Mr. So I produced, yeah, like Martyr said, I produced a lot of shows mainly because I saw opportunities in the scene that weren't there, and I was just like, why isn't this happening? Why are the same people being booked over and over again? And I know that's a constant conversation that we have in this scene. But when I say that, I try to phrase it in a sense of gatekeeping. Like, why only book the same? I always say that's why I book the same people if you have an audience that comes frequently. Granted, for certain shows, yes, that works because that audience comes for that quote unquote cast.
Yeah.
But if for me, I see things as a whole, I see a community of like different walks of life who can do. I can see two performers who can do something that other one can't do, and those performers would inspire me for a show. Blue School was inspired by the altered draglings of Brooklyn. You know, the underdogs of the underdogs. You know, the freakiness. Because you would think Brooklyn would have a fucking spooky drag show.
It doesn't.
You would hope.
It didn't. Blue School did that. That's where my parties would come from. I would look at a performance like I think you're so cool because I'm people know that I'm like I call myself the hype day, you know, of Brooklyn, because when I see drag performers, like they make me I don't know, I see them as like superheroes, supervillains. So I see them with abilities and things like that. So I see if they Martyr, for instance, and they're like this priesthood and all these things. I'm like, okay, let's do a fucking gothic cathedral like Notre Dame party based on, you know, and we'll all like wear white and we'll all be like 7 deadly sins and we'll have 7 sins versus the purities or the virtues, you know, virtues versus sins, you know what I mean? And that was just started off of like in that moment. Never thought of that before.
I had an idea for a show like that, and it was going to be called Church, and it was going to be held on Sunday, and you were going to wear your Sunday's best, and it was going to be themed.
And what happened?
Know that.
It never took off. So,
and nobody came to the service.
But I bet everybody was on their knees and sipping that wine, weren't they, girl?
Body of Christ.
Confess.
So you started a drag house. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So my drag house is called the Haus of D, and the thing about the trademark D, specifically in my name, that is a secret only with the house members for the D in my name and the individual Ds in all of our names. But the D in Haus of D has the D in it means dimensions. So like the House of Dimensions. So like, because if you're in the House of D, you're able to kind of go and change your form no matter the situation or the setting. And so we saw parties as different dimensions or different, you know, parallels to our own. And so when let's say there's a party called, let's say, like Lemon Chiffon's party, we will go and we'll maybe like have a little Australian like Kylie Minogue moment. We'll go and we'll like maybe like just for that. Or there's like I said, for like Ghoul School, then we'll dress all like ghouly. Or then there's or like for Oops, and then we'll just like, you know, have the energy of like we'll just be those bitches for that night, you know. Or we'll go to like Mondays on Monday, and then we'll just like, you know, or like, you know, we'll just go different parties and like exude that with our essence, or we would use that kind of like to challenge ourselves to like push our aesthetics, because you know we aren't, you know, we have many forms, and that was the inspiration behind Haus of D. And the first house member, it's my first stillborn, Iodine D Quartz.
Oh,
Iodine.
yeah.
Hi, babe.
Who I want on the show, by the way.
Yes.
Let him know.
I got and then her sister, Silo Siren. They are a recent addition. Silo Siren officially became a house member. So a funny story about how Silo Siren became part of the house. Same thing with Iodine too. Iodine I actually found on Instagram during my incubation period. You know, just on Instagram, just trying to get inspiration for like my new forms and all that stuff. And I just wanted to look at, and I was at a point where I was just wanted to see other Black performers, because again, there are really a lot of Black performers now. I feel like that's growing, but still aren't, and there still needs to be.
I agree.
So I was on Instagram and I found her, and actually, fun fact, she knew this gig. I was conversing with both of them too, because I really liked her aesthetic, and I got this mindset of like, okay, I have this new form, and I want to create a house. And so hit up Iodine, and at this time she was living in Philadelphia, and she wasn't in Brooklyn, and so she was a fan of mine apparently, and I told her like, hey, you want to be booked for my show, Ghoul School? And she's like, yeah, girl. I was like, okay, it's this night, and I didn't know that she lived in Philadelphia until when she came that night. I was like, oh, where are you coming from? She's like, oh, Philly. I was like, bitch, what? She's like, yeah, girl, I'm talking with some friends. And for me, I feel like that shows, at least to me as a producer, like you want to be booked.
Mm-hmm.
For a show, if someone tells you like, hey, come out, support my show, if you go on, you support that person, especially if you come from another state, bitch, you want it. So, and I booked her, and so she kind of became my like stage kitten for a lot of my shows before she officially became my daughter. Because at the time I was only doing drag for maybe going on 2 years, and I didn't really feel confident in it. But like a lot of young mothers, I took the responsibility and I made it work. And she's honestly, Iodine is one of my best friends in the scene. Like she's my, she literally a gem, like a rock. Like she was my definitely. There was a point in a scene where outwardly I was, now I can say I was successful and I did a lot of things, but inwardly I was like imposter syndrome. I'm not this bitch, and she was always. She helped me combat that, and I was that confidant for her as well in terms of helping her find her setting in the scene. And then Salo Siren was her friend when she was coming up. And I was introduced to Silo Siren at Iodine's party called Period, which was at it was at Father's Knows Best. And I really liked their energy. And for me, I feel like if I do have a superpower, that's a superpower to see the potential in people and things. And so I saw her and I was like, oh my God, I love their aesthetic. I love everything about them. And not to be like, I'm gonna grab them and add it to my house. But I wanted to slowly just start that conversation at first because they had a bad experience coming into the Brooklyn community with another producer who actually in a lot of ways. And so I didn't want to come up across that way with them too. And then eventually they saw through Iodine who I was and what the house was about and what I was about. And the rest is history. And those are the two official house members, those two, and then they have their offsprings and their gems that they're creating and forging with their own things. But when Iodine gets on the podcast, you can ask her about that. But
I will. Let them know.
Your grandmother, girl. Your grandmother.
Damn.
I mean, look at this morning. It's just on times. The thing I tell my kids is that when it comes to the house, like I don't own the house. The house is all of us. We all have keys to it because we can all do things what we want with it, but I can have a different iteration of it, or they can do their own things with it or without it. But that doesn't define our connection that we have because now who we are, we're family. Whether if any of us subsequently drag or decide to do other careers, like we're in each other's lives. I can confidently say like forever because those two are like my hearts.
Aww.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to take a break, and then I'm gonna do the anime question when we come back.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back, kids.
More
Bye.
Wig, did you just say wig?
Wig, okay.
I know, wig. I feel that already.
Wig, okay.
Wig, did you just say wig?
Wig, okay.
I am ready for my wig to go flying.
All right, we back? We ready?
Yes, but we're back, kids. But an important question because we kind of glossed over it, but I want to bring it up.
Okay.
Lay.
Yes.
What's your favorite anime?
Ooh, good question. Are we talking about currently or all time? Because currently and all time, those are two different answers.
I say, what's the one that inspired you the most? Because I know you bring a lot of those elements into performance. You even did like a kabuki look for Bushwig from 1 year. I remember that. That was great.
Yeah, I would say obviously Sailor Moon because my hair, Pretty Garden in Brooklyn, all of that. Jazz.
Which one's your favorite Sailor Scout?
My favorite Sailor Scout. It's a tie between Sailor Saturn and Sailor Uranus.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
They're like the lesbian ones.
Like when you go and be that sexy, and then Saturn, I mean, as a Capricorn, just like emo destruction. Just like, I don't want to do what I gotta do, but I'll wreck you if I have to, I guess.
Yeah, for real though.
Emo queen, you gotta have the emo queen with like you can't have gender dysphoria without being emo. Like I feel like it just comes hand in hand, Yeah.
I want to meet the bitch that tries.
For me, I feel like anime definitely helps with a lot of my drag performances and integrating in the scene because it involves a lot of that escapism. I would say I mentioned earlier, which is like just imagining things, like imagining an environment differently. And so like me seeing myself as like this heroine and all my like new friends as like other like up and coming like superheroes, that was definitely like me living like, if doing drag felt like I was living my own comic book in a sense. Like I can go out, wear this outfit, you know, do a song, dance, rap, you know, dance with strangers, get paid for it, have a good time, and like make new friends out of it. Like life couldn't get any better. And I would say like with anime too, that's why I want to do my party anime, because I feel like anime has a lot to do with queerness in a sense, because a lot of anime characters or shonen anime, which is the genre a lot of us are like known to, like, so like Dragon Ball Z, those kind of like underdog characters that are off with nothing or like less than, and then you see them like work from zero, and then at the end they have like everything. And as a queer person, I feel like how can you not relate to that, especially a POC queer person, where you feel like, okay, someone's either gonna hate me because of my skin color, or you're gonna hate me because of who I like. So the whole world's against me. I have to be my own hero. And having that kind of like unique archetype of like being queer and Black too. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of heroes I could look up to, because a lot of the, again, like masculine figures I didn't really like identify with. And so I looked for like non-fictional characters who can do these unworldly things, but it was in a realistic setting, in a sense of like, you didn't see them have all these plot holes like a lot of animes have, where they just get these power-ups out of nowhere. You saw how they worked and they trained and they had something to fight for, which a lot of the times was the power of friendship. And I found out recently that the reason why anime has a lot of themes of like, you know, friendship is power, is because they wanted to subliminally condition Japanese children to kind of have that camaraderie with each other.
That's so nice.
I was like, yay for brainwashing. I was like, okay,
it worked. It worked for me. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, me too. Because now I'm just like, you know, it's like, how can you not enjoy life when you see things through a rose-colored lens? You know, and I feel like when you have that anime mindset, you have that part of your brain where everything is magical, everything is exciting. And so add that with drag too, then it's like, oh damn, bitch, like I did transport to a whole nother world. Like I would work my day job, work that, you know, 9 hours, go home, get dressed, either go out to one of my gigs or go out and support a friend, which me like being very dapper during the day and then being very gender non-binary at night. Just looking back at it now, it was such a flip, because those are so different like countercultures. And I think that anime is very underground, and that's definitely how it started in the States. And I feel like that ties into drag too, because drag obviously started in the underground, which they're both something that was very coveted behind the scenes, because the mainstream would be like, oh, that's weird, or that's not acceptable. So I feel like those two themes tie in together too, like anime and drag.
So, well, yeah, that kind of like, because I kind of into cosplay as well, not like super into it, but like I've been to like different like events and stuff, and it's funny to me like how few drag cosplay crossovers there are, because they're so similar. I feel like the communities are really similar, like the costumes are similar, like the performances are similar. Like it's funny that there's very few drag queens who cross over to both and do cosplay.
Now that I've taken my break and did, you know, a lot of like inner work and like looked about a lot of this, like how I got to where I'm at now, I see how drag honestly is cosplay. I say how we use drags to cosplay an identity that's in ourselves. Whether that's like maybe a different gender identity, or maybe that's a part of you that you always wanted to express, that still is an identity. And I feel like you're cosplaying as that. And not cosplaying as in pretend, but you are wearing, you're kind of putting together these ingredients to create something that's inside yourself, you know? And for me, I kind of took Sasha Velour's mindset of doing drag. It's like, why do drag and have this power of alchemy, right? And alchemy in the sense of like, have these tools to literally create anything. We have makeup and fabric, and we've seen performers literally become other beings and creatures. And then for me, I'm like, if I have this power, right? If I can have this tool to change my form into anything, why for me, not for anyone else, but why for me, why would I aim low in terms of what my imagination is, and just to switch my gender? Whereas I can not only switch my gender, but make that gender have superpowers.
Yeah.
So, you know,
you don't even have to be human.
Right.
You
And
can
that's
be
what I'm
whatever the fuck you want.
Yes, and I think that there's a lot of drag personas, and I say drag persona as like a drag persona because I think a lot of our drag characters are personas. I'm just gonna say
Mhm.
that is a
I
dogma.
mean, yes, that's not controversial. That's true.
Yeah.
What are you
And-
talking about? I don't have 3 other personalities.
Martyr alone literally has 3. Your drag persona,
Martyr has like
your
10.
drag persona has drag personas, bitch. But your drag is Inception incarnate.
Mhm.
Gag.
Who called it? I think Hazel said it first. Maybe you jumped into it, but the Martyr cinematic universe, because y'all can't y'all
Okay.
can't see their faces right now, but Lay just
we are
gave-
like not into it.
no, Lay had a little bug eye moment, so
Okay.
Caitlin hates it.
I'm like, this is stupid, but okay. But I don't like the Marvel Cinematic Universe anyway.
Oh,
besides
whatever.
Spider-Man.
I mean, well, talking about cinematic universes, I will say something I would love to get out is that something I talked about heavily in my competition. Let's have a competition, a little mixed bitch. Was I wanted to really like tell those performers that like you have to kind of have a story arc with your drag persona, because not to say that it has to, you know, you have to change your name or evolve it into something else that you don't identify with, but it has to grow. There has to be a start and there has to be a journey to it. You know, it just can't be so static, because at least not when you start out, because then you'll plateau. And if you plateau when you first start out, then like, where do you go from there? And so I think that a lot of us, and even thinking of our you know, drag steps or like my drag generation in Brooklyn, and I consider my drag generation as anyone who started performing in Brooklyn at the end of 2016, early 2017. So I would say, you know, like Harajuku, Magenta, like West Dakota, Mr. She was performing in Brooklyn way before me.
Yeah.
So like people who was like doing like end of 2016, early 2017, like people around that time, I would say those are definitely people in Brooklyn who I feel like pushed the envelope in what Brooklyn drag could be. Because prior to that, a lot of people don't know. Like according to my research, Brooklyn drag started out when I believe like Thorgy and
A little before Thorgy, but yeah, she kind of brought it more mainstream.
Yeah, it was like,
was it Crystal something? That's what I've
here we go. Crystal
constantly told that she, like brought the modern day Brooklyn drag scene.
Yeah, and was it their party Saliva or Bath Salts? Something like that.
I think it's Saliva.
Well,
I have it.
was a little later.
Yeah, Bath Salts later. I think it's Saliva because I have it in my book somewhere.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is that compared to that generation from the people who like started Brooklyn or started drag in Brooklyn, which was honestly to create a space where they can do their drag that wasn't accepted in Manhattan. I feel like that was already established, that kind of scene when we started drag. So we were just trying to push the envelope in terms of just like, we just want to see how far we can get away with what we're doing. And I think that a lot of our people in my generation, we blew up so fast because that was the like season 9 of Drag Race. So that's when Drag Race started to become mainstream, season 9 and 10. And so people wanted to pay money for drag or wanted to see people online do drag. And so I think I feel like I always say how Brooklyn drag definitely was trendsetters at a time for drag, and that kind of period I do miss in a sense, because that was a point where people were just doing it for fun and they were just uncovering gold, and instead of trying to force it in a sense, it was just like it's like there it goes first I think it's called force versus flow, something like that, instead of just letting it flow and just like have fun and letting the parties happen and people get the gigs and things like that. People just, I don't know, it's just not the same.
Let's talk about West Dakota. She was involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. What has been your experience with the rise of Black Lives Matter, and do you have any advice for people who want to be allies like West Dakota?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for myself, just a quick little anecdote, how I kind of got into activism was actually in 2017, the summer 2016. I kind of like fell into it literally where I walked into a march that was happening when I got off of work. I was playing Pokemon Go because that's a summer Pokemon Go
Yes.
thing.
I miss it.
I catch a Zubat, and then
I know, right?
swear I was like, why can I catch a Zubat? I was like, why is everybody? Oh shit. Okay, well we're in this now. And not to say I didn't care about causes outside myself. Of course not. I mean, of course I did. But for me as a Black person who was still figuring out my place in the Black community, and that's a whole thing. But I wasn't at a point where I could put myself in harm's way for other people. I just wasn't in that headspace yet. But hearing the crowd and how everyone was so passionate and how everyone was so outraged that their energy kind of like flew into me, and then I became outraged, and then things just started to click, and I realized, what the fuck, like I should be upset. And then I ended up on a highway, and then I got detained. Yep. And then ever since then, I was like, you know what? Fuck the police. It was really funny too because it was raining, and I again left my day job, was like, retail. So I had like a button-up shirt, jeans, and loafers on, where everybody else is in all black and like jeans and sneakers and stuff.
Yeah.
Raining, and there were people who were asking our names as we're getting detained. And the people, as they're trying to ask our names, they're like, what's your name? What's your name? To me. And I was like, Ololade. They're like, what? I'm like, Ololade. They're like, how do you spell it? And mind you, my hand is like behind my back as they're like putting like these like
oh my God
guys on me, and it's raining, and I'm just like, never mind.
Oh my God.
Never mind. And
oh my God.
No, they're asking my name so then they can tell different powers that be, to help or assist us, whether that be the National Lawyers Guild, which is a nonprofit guild to help people who are detained at protests. So definitely look into the National Lawyers Guild if you are detained at a protest, or if you see anyone being detained, because you are legally allowed to ask the person's name as they're being detained or arrested. So just know that. And then after that, I wasn't really doing a lot of activism stuff until I was really doing drag, until I started doing drag towards I guess Trump got elected, because then he was doing a lot of immigration stuff. And so I was going out to a lot of actions at that time. And I helped start this group called like Voices For. And if you know about them,
I do. I didn't know you were involved with them.
I was one of the founding members when we
oh
first started.
wow.
And
they do really great work.
They do really great work. And that organization, it was a unique experience. I will say, for anyone who wants to get into activism, just research a specific group or cause before you get into it, because nowadays with activism, a lot of it can be sensationalized for cloud or for whatever, or for personal reasons that aren't the cause. And I feel like if you're doing activism that isn't, and if your reason isn't for the cause, you shouldn't be doing it. But I do suggest for people to do what's in their power, because something that I did notice this past summer, which if you think about it, Black Lives Matter action, in groups started in 2016. That's when the group officially formed.
I didn't know that.
Because that's what it was based off of Trayvon Martin.
Okay, that makes sense.
In that case, and then 4 years later, before another election, I'm just saying things to think about. Before another election, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff starts to happen and blow up on media again, and people, police brutality. And so it made me started to really think and question the powers at be. And I started to research stuff about the history of this country in terms of the police. And for those who do not know, the police started out as volunteer slave captors to capture slaves. I did not know that, but when I told certain folks afterwards, they was like, yeah, I knew that. And I'm like, okay, but then why are we upset that police are racist? Or, New York City, when it was New Amsterdam, it was one of the last, not only was it the first place where the Atlantic slave trade landed, but it was one of the last places to abolish slavery. But yet we're upset New York City is racist as a state when it was founded literally on racism, And so like, it's just things that is like, if you don't know the history of things and you get upset and you waste your energy in certain stuff, then you're gonna kind of like wreck yourself. And I saw that a lot happening this summer where a lot of people, it was kind of like the perfect storm in a sense of there was a pandemic. So people were just stir crazy, already locked down in their house. But then a lot of people were not working. So a lot of people were either working from home or unemployment. And so you had a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands and some resources to go out and do a lot of activism stuff. But they were treating it as a marathon, as a race and not a marathon. And I saw a lot of friends, go out every day and like really just wreck themselves. And then by the time we really needed bodies or to keep the energy up, then it kind of just faded away. So I just suggest for people to research what groups you want to be a part of, and know the causes that you want to use your voice and body for, and just know that there are certain parameters you can use yourself. You don't always have to put your body, out there. That's not for everybody. I always suggest do what you're able to do, because I saw a lot of policing of what people should do when it came to police brutality. And that really frustrated me, because it's like we're all mourning, especially that time too, because that was 3 months into New York City being locked down, or a lot of the lockdown in the country and around the world. So at that point, emotions were just raw, and so we were just mourning. And so, but a lot of people are just placing blame on everyone else, and that never helps. That just adds more chaos and animosity. So I always suggest for people to be mindful of what you want to be a part of and how much of yourself you want to be a part of it, because that is something I learned as the former pretty guardian of Brooklyn, fighting for causes and putting yourself out for other people, and getting to a point where you get so exhausted that you can't even do anything, or you mentally exhaust yourself where you don't even know who you are, so you just be mindful.
Yeah. I also think it's important to do things for the right reasons, and not for like bragging reasons or being fake woke, which was my big thing. Because I feel like, oh, everyone's doing it now, I have to be like super woke about everything. But that only lasted for what, a couple weeks, a month. If you're dedicated to a cause, like, keep going.
Just keep going, and like, you don't have to talk about what you're doing as you're doing it, like as it's uploading, because again, like you said, right, we're doing it for face value. And perfect example for me, which was like something that hits close to home, was everything that was happening with SARS in Nigeria. And for people who know what SARS is an acronym for a police agency, or not even an official police agency. It's honestly essentially just like this group of people who are policing a certain area in Nigeria. And so they've been doing it for so long that people have been looking the other way, and kind of just gave them the right to do it. Essentially how the police here became police. And so what they've been doing, especially for that specific massacre that went viral, that gun shooting massacre, stuff like that happens all the time since the 90s. That's stuff my dad has been telling me about. But for me, I first got a little excited when I saw a lot of my peers and people in my community share that stuff. It's like, oh my God, finally this is being talked about. And like, oh my gosh. And then it was like, I feel like for a week or like a weekend, everyone was posting about it, and then it was done.
All the time.
But then I realized, wait, that's just the cycle of media, not just social media, just such a cycle of media in general. It's always the next thing, the next topic. So we have to be mindful of how we engage with the news that we see and the causes that we want to be a part of, because we have to be mindful that we are living in a generation where news and media is being bombarded onto us so frequently and so often that we often don't pause or have a break for ourselves to just digest this scene or experience. And I think that has to do with a lot of just going back to like how I mentioned it in the beginning, how I took a break from social media. But I'm realizing now that something that Felix in the future told me, Felix and the future, that he's such an amazing artist and he makes great ponchos. So I would look him up.
I love ponchos.
I love ponchos too. He's so
I know.
He gave me some great advice when I was venting to him about, my break, my most recent break, and how I just didn't feel like I could trust social media or just like technology again. And something that he told me was that like anything's a tool and anything is what you make of it. And so if you feed in negativity, or if you give it that kind of like negative kind of like connotation, then that's what it's going to be. So don't see it as that. So I just think that as we see these things, just like digest it and take it with a grain of salt, because if you let all this stuff get to you and exhaust you, then you won't be able to be ready for, the next thing.
I agree. So you kind of mentioned this earlier, but what's the best advice you've been given in drag, to do drag, about drag?
Ooh, I know that. Okay, actually two.
Okay.
Can I give you two answers?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
Well, you said, I guess technically I have one answer, because if it's advice that I've been given,
or that you've given other people as well.
Or given other people.
Yeah,
okay.
either one.
The best advice I have been given, which was a very cautionary warning from Untitled Queen, who I love so much. She is the
course.
closest thing I would consider to as a drag parent, because she has just been like just a good friend to me and helped me with like number of things like that in the past. She told me that, girl, be careful when you start doing drag, because at first it's fun, and make sure you enjoy that moment, because before you know it, it's going to be a job, and then that's when the race happens. You know, the monster takes over, and you won't really enjoy it. And then I see a lot of people get burnt out, or they quit drag, or they get frustrated, or they become, or they just let it get to them. And I see that with a lot of people now too, who I see who have first started out, and now they have some experience underneath their lace, and so now they want to come out other people. And I'm hearing stories of people who are producing shows now or booking other people, and they're gatekeeping or not paying people. And I'm like, I remember when you wanted to get booking so bad, or I remember when you were this ingenue, and it's just wild. But that, I feel like that's with any industry, honestly. It's just, just find a way to stay grounded, or just keep yourself with some good people. But yeah, the best advice I've been given was from Untitled Queen, and that is just enjoy drag for the fun of it before it becomes a job. And the best advice I feel like I give into other people is kind of like a mantra I say to myself and to just people in general nowadays. But I was inspired by this phrase by actually the Nobodies, and the first time I said it was actually to Lady Berika Andrews, and it was after Mixed Nobody, I want to say 2019, and she was just like soaking it in, because for the Nobodies, it was just a big moment for them, because they packed out Bushwick Bazaar, or the one that's in Greenpoint, the one that's still open. Is that Bushwick Bazaar or Bazaar Bushwick? Because they
oh, that's a good
you would know,
question.
Martyr. I don't know.
I think it's Brooklyn Bazaar.
Okay.
It's also closed now, so
okay.
Yep.
Well, when the Nobodies had their competition, and they packed the house of the venue, and Berka was just taking it in, and she just, not that she couldn't believe it, but I could just see it in her, in the moment where she was just taking it in of how far she's come, and for that group and what they're creating and the legacies and stuff like that. And I told her, girl, know the presence that you carry and the power that you hold, because we all have a presence and we all have a power. We may not know how big or small our presence is. So I always suggest people figure out what your presence is and learn how to grow it and learn how to minimize it. Keep your energy to yourself when you need to, learn how to give it to other people. And the power is knowing what your power is, because we all got a power. And once you figure that out, bitch, there's nothing you can do. Because if you know what your presence is, you can go to a room, people can feel you, and then your power will be like, it's a wrap. And that was something I really wanted my friends, who I called the ghoul kids, who are the altar, the altar draglings, the people who weren't mainstream, even for Brooklyn, the people who weren't being booked a lot, the people who are my good Judies and that kind of side of drags. There was this one moment in drag in Brooklyn, where there was the cool girls versus the ghoul girls, like all the girls who were like pretty and fishy, that didn't book any of the girls who weren't that aesthetic, and they were going to fences and talk shit about it.
I didn't know about this.
And so that really made me mad, because I'm the type of person who I can honestly be a social butterfly, and I can be in like any scene, and I'm known as someone who floats in different scenes in Brooklyn. And so for me to see that from both sides was very disheartening. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna side with the Go Girls, because I love an underdog, as I mentioned in anime. And so fuck
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
If I can't be a cool girl, then bitch, I'll be a ghoul girl. Like,
That's
Ghoul
right.
girl.
When in doubt,
Scooby-Doo in the ghoul school.
Period.
Hell yeah. I'm here for that. All right, Martyr, it's your one question. Even though you
That's my
actually
one
asked
question.
questions.
Yeah, I've been active
I'm very
lately.
proud of you. This is a year of growth.
Wow. Growth.
We love that.
Growth.
So where do you want to take your drag in the future?
Where I want to take my drag in the future, currently what I want to do with my drag, actually, I will answer that question the way I answered it when I applied for my submission for Drag Queen of the Year, when that was going to happen, but then it didn't, because Miss said, no, thank you. If I was Drag Queen of the Year, what I wanted to use with that prize money was I wanted to start a drag production company to kind of help support other people and their parties and their ideas, to kind of help facilitate other spaces and cultivate moments of uniqueness, and kind of keep the spirit of quote unquote what I consider Brooklyn drag alive. And what I consider Brooklyn drag specifically is just like living the fantasy you wish to be. And so I wanted to be a producer so I can create spaces for that through that, House of D production company, which is, a goal later on. But now, since, there's a lot more things at stake nowadays, I'm kind of reprioritizing where I'm using that kind of sense. And so what I want to use now for my drag career is use this time of me growing out my facial hair and working on my body in a physical sense to embrace, like I said, my masculine side and be a drag rapper. And so right now I'm focusing on just writing music, recording music videos, and trying to kind of find moments where I can inspire people through drag here in LA. I'm just trying to wait till it gets more calm out here. Like something I was considering was like maybe doing like pop-up street shows in like the Santa Monica Pier. I used to do that. And like, could you imagine like, me doing like, wait a minute, and like Santa Monica and just like going spy, or like,
Oh my gosh.
Or I want to use drag in a sense of activism. There's a group that I started in Brooklyn called the Black Lotus Guild, which is a nonprofit. Well, not specifically a nonprofit yet, that's the goal, but we're just a group of people who just want to help in communities, whether that's education or whether that's fundraising money for them, like everyone is doing nowadays. But what I want to do with this group specifically is that when it comes to actual physical actions where people have to show up with their bodies, is actually use drag and performance art, and in a sense to add emotions and feelings to actions and causes. So that's something that I'm working on slowly but surely, but I'm kind of taking my time.
Well, do you think it'll come back to Brooklyn?
So I did a post, which is still up. No, it's not up anymore. I did a post when I left saying how like I'm never coming back. That, and I try to say that I speak in definitives. Like when I speak, like it's mindfully, and so like that's slate in stone, and I will redact that statement and say Black lady may never come back. However, if I'm in another form, who knows? Who knows? Because I don't want to put myself in a position where I am putting myself out for others when I'm not able to do that for myself. And so I'm just being very mindful where I'm doing that. And so I'm just doing what I can behind the scenes, or behind the seams, if you will. And all I can say right now is just wait for V-Day for D Mixtape Volume 1 and D Mixtape Volume 2, which will be songs from the Ladyboy era and Black Lady era. So Volume 1 is Ladyboy, Volume 2 is Black Lady, and then right now I'm just working on all my new stuff that will feature Black D, the aggressive Gatling gun spitting ghoul.
I love
that.
it.
Well, thank you so much, babe, for being on a little shit show.
Yay, this is definitely one of our best episodes. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Oh yeah.
Where can the ghouls and the gays and the theys find you on the internet?
Oh yes, you can find me on currently the Instagrams at Black, which is BLVCK _D _, or you can just go to Martyr's following, people who he follows, who they follow, and just look up Black D. I forget what the iteration of my Instagram handle is at this moment because I forget if it's the underscore before or after.
I can check.
I think it's Black dot D,
time.
Isn't it?
I was on your Instagram earlier.
I thought it was Black dot D.
Hold on, it's fine. Oh, it's _Black _D _.
What Caitlin said. That's
WERRRK. It'll be in the description.
Yeah, it's all in the description. Don't worry.
But it was a pleasure to have you. It's been too long since I've seen you, even though it's been like, I think like maybe 2 months. But
for me, it's been literally like almost exactly a year.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Twilight Zone. Well,
Yeah.
let's not let it be another year before we see each other, Caitlin.
I want to see you in LA. Like literally my quarantine goals after the world stops ending is to go back to LA. Like just to visit. So I want to see you there for sure.
Hang out with me and Shanita. Granted, we haven't hung out yet, but that's because LA crazy.
That's because LA is like where New York was earlier.
Is LA still on fire or is it just
No,
COVID now?
LA, everyone's just in the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I hope that recovers soon.
Very soon. I'm very worried about all my friends out in LA.
Yeah. But we love you, babe.
Yay.
Thank you again. I'm Martyr.
I'm C Tepper.
And this was Bye.
I'm C Tepper. You can follow me on Instagram at CTEPPER and read my book, The State of Drag, where I interviewed 175 drag queens from around the world. All proceeds go to charity on Amazon.com.
Ooh, I love that. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Drag the Martyr. And if you have any thoughts, comments, dick pics, send them to dragthemartyr@gmail.com.
Listen, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Pandora.
And catch up with past episodes on WERRRK.com. That's WERRRK.com. Artwork for Wigging Out was provided by Glitter Baby Online. That's Glitter Baby Online. Thank you.